Welcome back to another episode of the Jesus Cartel. With me, as usual, Mr. Clay Russell. Clay, how are you doing, brother?
Man, life is good. It's good to be Clay Russell, and it's good to be part of the Jesus Cartel. And we appreciate y'all being a part of the Jesus Cartel.
That's right. That's right. And today's episode holds some special significance.
Amen.
Because this is going to be episode number 1 of season 4
Come on.
of the Jesus Cartel.
Amen.
So we have completed 3 full years of the Jesus Cartel, now moving into our 4th year. And I gotta say, feels a little weird.
Yeah.
Feels a little weird.
Yeah, for you, it may make you even feel a little old, I mean, this is the longest running podcast you've had, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things have changed. A lot of things I would stay the same, but not very much.
Yeah.
A lot of things have changed in the last 4 years, and getting to do this, and man, you know what just started kind of as something that we just talked about for a little while, because we talked about it for months before we ever did it.
Right.
Has really been to where we have produced an episode every single week.
Yep. In some form or fashion.
Right.
There's been content every week for 3 full years. And we've talked about on the past, like some of the reasons that we started the Jesus Cartel and some of the things we hope to accomplish. I don't really want to lean in on that so much today. I really want to talk about what's changed.
Okay, before we do that, I just had a thought.
Okay.
Just real quick math. We've had, so that would be, 156 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've run a best of maybe like 4 times.
Yeah, 4, I think. Yeah.
Right. And then, so that means that we've done over 150 episodes.
Yeah.
Right?
Original content.
Original content. And so, man, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of times it would maybe take people 10 years to do that much content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so roughly 150 hours of content. That's quite a collection to have too, because even if we stopped today,
right,
to have forever etched in history the access to 150 hours of content, teaching, and relational things between you and I, man, that's something worth having access to for a lot of people that care about us and have been invested in our lives and in our teaching and different things over the years. To have a library of 150 hours of free.
Amen.
There's no paywall there. A lot of times people put paywalls on stuff like that. Obviously, that's not something we'd be interested in doing. But you understand what I'm saying, man?
Yeah.
It's not nothing.
Look, I agree, and just being able to have those kind of conversations. If you have a question about a certain topic, you can just listen to that episode and see what it's about. Devin and I were walking this morning, and we were talking about how a lot of times pastors, they come in, they teach or preach, and then they go out, and as long as people keep coming back, in their mind, hey, while people are listening, they're listening to everything I have to say, and they must agree with it because they keep coming back every week. Well, when you take some time and get to know somebody and actually have a conversation with them, then hey, they might not agree with you on a lot of things, and they may be right. Devin and I, walking around talking, there's a lot of things that we just see differently. It's not that we disagree and all that. It's just the way we look at things. We look at it different. He likes to make this big, huge goal, and if he doesn't accomplish it, it's okay, because at least he's striving to do good, and he knows he's doing way better than he did before. Mm-hmm. Me, if I don't accomplish a goal, I just get upset.
Ask the Lord to take you now.
Yeah. And, and like this morning, we did a workout this morning, and to be honest, I probably could have done that same workout again. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't usually have workouts like that, but it was just the way this workout was set. I probably could have done it again. But if I would have done it again and not finished it, even though I'm doing almost twice as much as what was required, I would have really been upset.
Yeah.
Now, Devin wouldn't have, because his deal is, hey, I'm so much better than I used to be, now I'm doing more than a whole workout, man, I've accomplished a lot. And so it's just different mindsets and stuff. So for us to be able to come on here with different mindsets from different places and talk about stuff, and the people to be able to hear that and be able to relate to one side of it or see it different, I think it's really cool.
Agreed. You remind me of the great Peter LaFleur, an athlete. You know Peter?
I don't.
He was the captain of the Average Joe's Gymnasium dodgeball team. And he was quoted once saying, "If you have a goal, I find that I might not reach it.
Okay.
But if I never have a goal, I'm never disappointed."
Yeah.
So,
So is that the movie Dodgeball? Yeah, I got you.
yeah, but it is oddly enough a mindset a lot of people take. You know what I mean? And so it is strange because I could never operate like that.
Right.
I would sooner die than not have anything I was trying to accomplish.
Right.
You know. But there are people who just see things through different lenses, and
So you have no goals, and then you got the people that want goals that are a little hard, but they're achievable, and then you want people to set them all the way up here, and so everybody sees it different.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really mind option B or option C. You know, option A is, you know, why are you even here?
Yeah, I think that I probably fall into the category of volume. I try to accomplish a lot of goals, and so it's not necessarily the size or the large grand scale of the goal. I just want to make sure that if I had 100 things to get done today, that I get all 100 of them
That's
done,
it.
and don't care really how significant they were, as long as everything gets done. And so, yeah, it is interesting. And so 4 years, man, to think.
Yeah.
I was 31 when we started.
Okay.
You know, which 3 years doesn't seem like that big of a gap, but I remember vividly 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And life looked completely different than it looks right now in literally every single area.
Yeah.
Every single area.
You got like a whole nother kid, right?
Yeah, I got a whole nother child.
Right.
You know what I mean? We live in a different home. We go to a different church. My work at Fresh Start is different than it looked then. I think I had just gotten back to Fresh Start from Pecan Haven, not too terribly long before we started the Jesus Cartel. And so it's like,
You'd never been to Pakistan.
I'd never been to Pakistan. That is true. Yeah, all of
Never
that.
started a nonprofit.
Yeah, it is wild how different. I think I weigh 40 pounds more.
Okay.
You know, like life is just wildly different than it was. A lot can happen in 3 years. And so I think for a lot of people in life, they would say that 3 years probably not a whole lot has changed. Not a whole lot has shifted. That's not been the story of the Jesus Cartel. And it's not, and for the podcast itself.
Yeah.
The podcast is relocated.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It's not even in the same spot.
Yeah, and so what a journey it's been, man. Glad to be a part of it. Excited to be a part of it. And what do you feel on the spiritual side of things?
Yeah.
Do you think has changed most about you in 3 years?
Well, you know, first off, I had done probably one podcast before this, and now I've done over 150.
Yep.
So just the aspect of communication on a podcast and a one-on-one deal
That's good.
has helped me even spiritually. You know what I mean? It's
I
helped me
remember
on
how
all sides.
nervous I was when we filmed the first one, because it's like, is this gonna sound stupid?
Right.
Like, I'm gonna, like, we didn't even know how the flow of everything was gonna go. Like, are you gonna lead everything? Am I gonna lead? Like, just the dynamic of figuring that all out.
Well, yeah, and I think the biggest issue with that is we had no plan. Our plan was that we were going to do a podcast, you know, and you kind of knew how to set up the equipment and stuff, but as far as how the flow of things were going to work, we didn't really understand, and it was kind of like we've just done for 150 days in a row that we just come in here and wing it and figure it out from there. But, yeah, so on the podcast side of it, man, we've gotten a lot more comfortable with that, a lot more comfortable with what's going on. On the spiritual side, man, you know, I'm in a lot different place, you know, as far as, because, and we can talk about this a little more, but, you know, the role that I have in the kingdom now is different.
Yep.
And so spiritually, I'm different because God was moving me, you know, into that role. Well, now I'm in that role, and it's very fulfilling, you know, what God has for me. But I will say this, man, I hope this doesn't come out bad. but I'm reading a lot more now in books. I'm reading a lot more of the Bible right now, different things. Oh man, I don't even know how to say this and not come out bad. And I'm not seeing a lot of things that are new. It's like so much when I read this, or when I read a book, or when I read that, I'm seeing a lot of the same things. And I think it's because I've grown so much spiritually. Not saying I can't grow anywhere. It's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that I've read the Bible way more in the last, 3 or 4 or 5 years than I did before. I've read a lot more books. I've preached a lot more. I mean, you got to remember, I was preaching, to a big audience, 4 times a year 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, I preach, every how many, probably 60 of the last 63 Sundays to the same congregation. I mean, that's more messages than I'd probably ever preached in a church my whole life. Yeah. And so I've
plus
grown.
150 hours of podcast material,
Right.
which is not nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus all of our teaching and all of our, and now we're doing IOPs and spend all the time with those guys and stuff. And so, spiritually, the amount that I've grown is leaps and bounds. Because, hey, there's a lot of research, a lot of planning, a lot of reading, a lot of praying, and God just revealing things to me. I mean, God has revealed more to me spiritually in the last, year and a half than probably my whole entire life.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. This is not something I've ever talked about before, so it's coming out for the first time. But when I look at it, I've always been in a good place spiritually. I've grown as God wanted me to grow. But the amount that I've grown now, there was conversations that I couldn't have with people, a few years ago because I just wasn't real knowledgeable in that area.
Yeah.
Now those experiences are fewer and far between. Now I can have a lot of conversations that I couldn't have before, about biblical things and spiritual things. And I was good then, but God has just grown me a lot spiritually in the last 3 years.
Yeah. What a big deal, man. Head knowledge at some point does begin to become something that's harder to track down.
Right.
Like once you've read scripture so many times, once you've read so many books, once you've, really exhausted the amount of information that you're taking in, trying to look into the depths of the context, stuff like that, it does come to a point where that's going to slow down some. But we also got to remember that head knowledge was never the intention.
Right.
That was never the intent. That was never God's intention, was that I would have people that have a head full of knowledge. That's not what we see from the early church. It's not what we see from they weren't in pursuit of greater head knowledge. They were just walking in the Spirit of God. And that, I believe, in 3 years has grown for you and I both tenfold. And so while the head knowledge part is kind of slowing down, which, I think that you're probably a lot closer to, kind of capping out head knowledge than I am, just because of how much information you've been taking in over the last few years. Is a lot more than I've been taking in. I definitely know that our ability and our willingness to walk in spiritual things has grown significantly, and we have both reaped the benefits of that in ways that I know for sure I didn't expect, and I feel pretty confident in saying that that's the case for you as well. Yeah. So if the last 3 years have brought on all of the change that it brought on, what is your realistic expectation for 3 years from now?
Yeah, and so to be honest, I have none. I really don't know. I sure didn't expect these last 3 to be the way they were. You got to remember now, we're talking about it looking at the end of 3 years.
Yep.
And we're talking about where we started, 3 years ago with this podcast and where we are now. And we're talking about that we are both bigger, stronger, and faster by leaps and bounds in some areas, right?
Yeah.
But also, there was a good bit of portion of that 3 years that sucked in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
There was a refining time and a fire time.
I was literally going to call it a refiner's fire. That's perfect. I love it.
That we both went through.
Yeah.
That was I mean, I can't think of a more difficult time in my life, short of people that I love dying.
Yeah.
There was a portion of this last 3 years there, and I mean, I can show you the months of it, I mean, but you already know, that for me was the biggest letdown by man that I've ever had. Some of the most, judgmental accusations against me and my family and ministry and stuff like that I've had ever in my life, especially by other Christians and stuff. And some of the time, I mean, more meetings than I've ever went to, and more meetings that I didn't want to go to that I had to go to, and more difficult times.
Yeah.
Right, and so in the middle of all that, in the 3 years, I mean, we're talking about it now that we've come out on the other side of it. And hey, I'm a senior pastor of a church that's thriving, and you're running a nonprofit that's affecting people all over the world and all over, and life is good, and we're very happy with where we are, and we're getting to preach and teach and do a lot of stuff and help people that nobody else wants to help and all that. But in the middle of that, from starting the podcast till now, there was times where it sucked.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No. That's there's no better way to describe it. I mean, that is the word.
For both of us.
Yeah. Yep. The refiner's fire. It it was an opportunity for the Lord to prove Himself good to His word, that He would take what the enemy intended for evil, and He would turn it for good. And I can, without hesitation, say that He did exactly that. And so what looked like, what was extremely hurtful to both of us, mentally, physically, and emotionally, the Lord has turned,
all three.
Yeah, the Lord has turned into, and I don't get hurt,
right,
for the record. So for me to say out loud that I got hurt by something is a much bigger deal. As a matter of fact, in the 3 years we've done this podcast, you probably never heard me say it.
Right.
For me to say
when
that
we were in the middle of it, we sure didn't say it.
No, it sucked, man.
Okay.
It sucked because.
But I don't think on the podcast any time in the 3 years we've ever said that.
No.
Not that one day was tough or any day was tough or a week or anything, but it's just hard to look back on how much bigger, faster, stronger we are now without realizing that there was some torture.
Yeah.
In that.
And I think that if I was going to say that there was a downside to it, I would say that, it's easy for us to spot any of our old faults in someone because we're most familiar with the things that we were most intimately bound up by.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, like, if you're an addict, or were an addict, you can see someone else who is in addiction, even if they're hiding it really well. Like, you can spot it. For me, I had, like, mass amounts of ego. And so I can spot ego in a person fast, and everybody else might be fooled. I'm like, no, this guy is egotistical as all get out. I know the way. I know. Yeah, I know the way a person like this maneuvers and would have to maneuver to hide that and what he's doing, and he's doing it exactly. Like, this is the playbook, and so I can see it. Well, having went through what we went through, it's very, very hard for me dealing with church issues now. Like, I find almost like a familiar scent when they start happening, and I'm just like, oh no, you know what I mean? Like, this isn't good. And there are legitimate, I don't want to say there's issues at every church, because I don't think that that's true. First off, I think that would just be unfair to say. I would say that every church, if it's striving to be better, is going to have some differences of opinion. There's going to be leaders that feel this way about things, leaders that feel this way about things. When those conflicts are not resolved well, that's hard for me to watch, because it's like, man, I've watched this unfold in the most horrendous of ways.
Right, and it doesn't just happen in churches. We see it in sports teams. We see it in businesses.
Sure.
We see it in all kind of things. And you're sitting back and you're looking at it and you're like, uh-oh. Yeah. You take, I guess we can pick on them for a minute. You take a team like Oak Grove, that's won all these state championships and stuff, and they have some adversity and have some things that they deal with, and then, and they're like, oh, they're just used to it. Oh, it's okay. We always bounce back, da-da-da. Then all of a sudden this year, didn't bounce back.
Nobody bounced back.
You know, I mean, it was too much of it. You know, now all of a sudden we're not there. You know, and I'm not just picking on them. I'm just saying you can see it a million miles away when you went through stuff like that.
But that doesn't let the other people see it.
Right.
And that's the part that's hard. It's just like, I might know that this guy's extremely prideful, but no one else wants to believe me because they're looking at him through rose-colored glasses, and they wanna, you know. I'm not talking about anybody in particular, by the way. This is metaphorical, but you know, they don't want to see the reality because they like the reality that they're living in, and they chose to be where they are. And so it's like, the problem is, if this doesn't get addressed, this doesn't end well. It's currently going okay, but it doesn't end well. And so it's the same with like kind of the way that the issues are handled within different churches and things like that. It's like, because I went through what I went through and you went through, it's like I can see the writing on the wall, and I can assure you it's far more serious than it feels. So when you see people trying to discuss and they're trying to get to some resolution, they're like, this isn't a big deal. I'm like, oh, but it is. And it's like, I'm just sitting over here and because it's not my alarms to wave, you know? Like, I don't have a place in some of these places to, you know, sound the alarms and do the things to try to help them. But it's just like, I'm watching it from back here, and they're like, oh man, this is going to blow over. It's not a big deal. And I'm just like, this is not going to blow over. It's very much a big deal. And, and I've seen the result of where it all ends.
Right.
And it's not pretty.
And you see how everything's so intertwined and everything. You know, when we got to Mangum, you know, 14 years ago and stuff, and we started meeting these families, and we met them all individually. You know, we'd meet them at the ballpark. We'd meet them, you know, at the restaurant. We'd meet them this. And, you know, it seems like everybody had their own cliques and everybody had their own stuff and everything. And we're just meeting people for who they are, right?
Right.
But then we start realizing, because, you know, my best friend's Jeff Boughton, and he knows everything about everybody, and it's just the way he is. You start realizing they're all kin to each other. You know, so they're all kin to each other. So, you know, you meet them individually, you become friends with them individually, but then you realize that issues that affect a lot of people and affect them corporately, you know. Well, it's the same way in churches. It's the same way in different things like that. You know, it affects not just those people, but a lot of other people, you know, stuff too.
And I think the other thing that doesn't get talked about a whole lot, and we may need to do an episode on that. Maybe next week we'll do an episode on this, but fatigue plays such a role. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's not that things are just so unbearably bad. Sometimes you just get worn out. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we can all swim. I say we can all swim. Most of us can swim. You know what I mean? But when you swim for so long, eventually swimming gets harder. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, there are many people who have drowned or almost drowned. I know a lot of stories of people who almost drowned because they were swimming to a point they thought they could swim, and then the return journey ended up being more than they bargained for. And it's like, in their mind, they were going to be fine, but the fatigue got them. And I think that a lot of times it's the fatigue of issues that wears us down and gets us. It's
that's
not
kind of what I was
necessarily
going to talk about. We can talk about this some next week, I guess. But
and we can talk about it now.
Well,
I
don't
just
mind.
think it's worth a block of time.
I'll tell you what, let's talk about that next week, because I do have a good bit of points on that. And I do kind of want to look, because I haven't looked, because I didn't even know what the episode was. I would like to look at where we are in different parts of our life, you know, since then. So, let's talk about that next week, because I got some opinions on that.
So I want to say this out loud so I don't forget, because a friend of mine, great pastor friend of mine, Derek Griffon, he works down south, he made an excellent post this week on pastor fatigue and imposter syndrome, which are both things that I have experienced. You know, the fatigue of ministry, not that it's so bad, but it wears on you, you know, especially when things seem to not be getting better. Mm-hmm. And then the imposter syndrome, just a brief synopsis of that is that you're up there, you're preaching the Word of God, you believe everything that you're preaching, but then when you step off the stage, it's like the enemy wants to try to convince you that you're not what you just preached.
Didn't receive it.
And so it's like, and there's all sorts of different ways that he'll try to attack that. And so I think those two things would be...
Let's talk about both those next week.
I
read that article too, and that would be something good to talk about next week.
Yep.
So, you know, spiritually, I'm in a way better place as far as knowing who I am in Christ, because that's something that we keep striving on so we get better. As far as my knowledge of the Bible is way superior to what it was 3 years ago. You know, I read the whole Bible all the way through with Terry Lee Cobble for 2 years right there, and then the New Testament the next year, you know. So, and reading a lot more books and stuff, and just being in tune with what God is telling me to do. You know, those things are all way better in my life than it was 3 years ago. I can hear from God even more clear. And what's cool, as you know, because you know me, I haven't fully accepted the whole senior pastor, lead pastor type mindset. I mean, you know, I have a pastor's heart, but not the whole mindset, you know, and that's coming, you know, I'm sure one day. But in my mind, I can hear what God is showing me and what God is showing me to give the people.
Yeah.
In two separate different voices. Mm-hmm. And there's no mistake which one is which.
Yeah.
And that is something that's really cool for me right now, because as the associate pastor of a church for 20 years, my job was to, you know, get behind the vision of the church and help the church do what the vision of the church was, and the pastor. But my job now is to hear from God, to become spiritually mature, to keep growing myself, but also to hear the word from the Lord for the church. Mm-hmm. And so far, they've been two different voices.
Yeah.
In two different words. God has been showing me things individually that it isn't time for me to share with the church. Right. He has a different word for them. And so to be able to hear God's voice in two different ways has been really cool for me, and something that I've never experienced like that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. That's really good. I think that the biggest change in 3 years for me has been, my wife asked me some years ago, I think I've talked about it on here before, she said, if there was one thing that you could do, so like, forget finances, forget like we got to survive, forget all of that. If you could just do whatever you wanted to do, what would you do? I told her without hesitation, immediately, I said, I would go to struggling churches and I would help to set them on a path. Mm-hmm. And I would help raise up leaders within that church to continue carrying out what we've established, and then I would move to the next place. And I would just maneuver around like that, trying to build up these churches that are having difficulty. That's what I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. I've been doing that for 2.5 years now. And it just kind of fell into my lap. You know what I mean? Like somebody heard from the Lord, somebody who didn't know me. They knew of me. They had seen me. We were not friends. We had never talked. And the Lord told him, hey, that guy's got a word to share, and you need to ask him to share it. And so on his platform, on his time, at his location, he called me and said, hey, I know this will sound weird. God told me you had a word, and I want you to come share it. And I told him no. I told him no because I was new to the place that he was at, and I didn't want to come in like a hammer. You know, I didn't want to come in and make this huge wave. And so it's like, I'm just like, I want to just be established here and kind of like fly under the radar for a bit and slowly increase my ability to influence through relationships. And he called me and he said, look, man, he said, like, I hear you, but the Lord told me you had a word. Like, and I did. Mm-hmm. And he was right. Yeah, I did. And so I felt like if I didn't oblige what he was asking, then I'd be dishonoring what God told him, because I did have a word, and I knew the word he was talking about. It wasn't confusing, and so I ended up going forward with it. And the word was transformative, if not for everybody, specifically for me and Jeremy and Trent, who have now become great friends. And through Jeremy, the Lord opened up doors of opportunity for us to go into these churches without pastors, and it's not pulpit filling in the traditional sense of like you put your name into the local association and they called the association and they asked. It's not like that. It's people who are specifically were seeking him out. Now, Jeremy's not even a pastor. Jeremy is just a good old boy Christian who is pursuing the Lord. Mm-hmm. And it's become evident in the way that he's living that something is shifting majorly. He's always been a good man, but it's shifting. You know what I mean? He's shifting from a good man to a God man, you know. And once he got in those doors, he just invited Trent and I to come along. And it has just boomed. That was like 2.5 years ago. And we've been everywhere since then and getting to pour in and build up and help create life. And most of these churches have pastors again now, but we were able to help teach, establish, correct, and set a lot of people on a strong path to where now they know what they need to be looking for moving into these pastor situations. And there's been a handful of churches, one church in particular in Maryland, in Tinsall, that we've been able to really establish some deep roots with. Like, those people are like a family to us now. And Jeremy recently, I don't know if I told you, but Jeremy recently accepted the interim pastorship there. And so now he's been getting asked to pastor there for 2 years. And he said no, because God didn't tell him it was time for him to do that. And everything was still growing and going. And so now Jeremy's doing that. Trent and I are going to come alongside him and help do whatever it is that the Lord wants to do there and really establish them. We're going to continue raising up leaders, which one of the young leaders, Matt Vincent, actually spoke a word last Sunday morning and absolutely killed it. Mm-hmm. Fantastic job. And we're just seeing the men and the women come to rededicate their lives to the Lord. People that have been in church for a long time, but they've just been going. They're saying, hey, look, I'm gonna take this serious. I want to chase after him. And it's like, that was just a dream of mine 3 years ago. It's just a dream, literally a dream. Like, I'm never going to do it, but I mean, it'd be cool if I could do something like that, you know? Yeah. That would be, and I remember telling my wife when she asked, I said, but you can't really do that, you know? Nobody would let you come in and say, hey, fix us. Like, it's never going to happen, you know? Wrong. And so God cared not just about me, but he also cared about what I cared about. Yeah. And he gave me the opportunity to do exactly what I cared about, and he's been equipping me to do that through the leadership and things that have been poured into me over the years. Because the last 3 years, while some of that has been extremely difficult, the last 10 years have been really good. Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of great things to glean. I've had way more good times than I've had hard times. And all of that, the Lord is used and is utilizing and will continue to utilize. I'm grateful for everywhere that I've been. I'm grateful for everywhere that I'm going. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful for the fact that God doesn't let the failures of man end that way. Not for his people, he doesn't. And so, yeah, man, there's been some times when man came up a little bit short or a lot of bit short in some things, but God never came up short. And so I think he's also reaffirmed me of his faithfulness in these 3 years. Mm-hmm. And not that, I don't mean it like, I'm not trying to protect the way anybody sees me when I say I never really had a doubt. He didn't need to prove that to me. I believed God was faithful. But despite the fact that I didn't need it, he was like, you know, hang on tight real quick. Let me show you what I can do with this.
Well, I mean, 3 years ago, I was just at this point. 3 years ago, I was starting my second police jury election.
Oh, snap!
Yeah,
you sure were.
And that I lost.
I forgot about that.
Right? You know, and so here I am. Starting this at this point. In June and stuff. And then in August at the qualifying, I find out that this guy that I'd been friends with for a long time was also running, which really, killed my chances. Yeah. So now from August to November, I got to try really hard at something that I know is almost impossible. Yeah. Because the votes are split, on this side, and then the other guy that was there. And so it was a lot. And so that was very challenging there, to be able to go through all that and everything. And so there was a lot of things, as far as, in my mind, hey, I go on and win that race. and I become police jury president, and then by this time I'm probably running for state representative.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the track. And then next thing you know, hey, we're not doing that, but yet there's opportunities to be, a lead pastor, and then all of a sudden, well, we're not doing that, and then things change. And so there was a lot of change, in this time and everything as far as in aspirations and all that. I mean, I've had times in my life where I went 3 years with very little change. But this wasn't one of them.
Right.
So in the first area in spirituality, hey, a lot's changed. As far as our aspirations and what our aspirations were 3 years ago and what they are now, and what's changed, that's changed greatly. Fresh Start has changed,
Fresh Start has changed almost completely.
Mine and your roles have completely changed.
Right.
In the last 3 years.
Yeah. The program is still the same.
Right. Well,
mostly,
it's better.
Mostly, it's improved, but
it's a better version of the same
it's
program.
It's still Fresh Start. It's
right.
not it's not lost its identity. But what you and I do,
it's totally
almost 100%.
I was telling the guys in first phase of the day, I said, y'all don't realize this, but if you were in first phase for the 17, 18 years before now, because this really changed exactly 2 years ago, for sure, which me and you knew it was changing for the 2 years before that.
Sure,
but when they saw it, I said, man, for the other 18 years of Fresh Start, if you was a first phaser and I knew who you was, you better be, because you work in the kitchen.
That was a bad thing.
It was not a good thing, And in fact, in my mind, and like it sounds terrible coming out, but it sounded terrible when I was telling the first phasers the other day, if you couldn't make it through first phase at Fresh Start, you wasn't really worth me getting to know.
That's right.
Because we weren't going to have a long-term relationship.
Right.
Evidently, you're not listening to what we have to say, and you're not going to gain from us, or you'd still be in the program. So if you couldn't make it the first 28 days in Fresh Start, as easy as it is, me and you really couldn't benefit each other.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it that way, but you're not going to receive from me. I'm not going to form a long-term relationship with you in 28 days.
I was just telling the guys in my class this morning. First off, I told them, I said, I'm very invested in you. Right. I said, more so than I've ever been, because before it was much harder for you to get a hold of me.
Right.
You wouldn't have had the audience you have with me like you have now. I said, I don't even know how long I've been teaching this class. I've got no clue. And I was trying to think. Right. I really don't know how long I've been teaching that class.
Whatever how long that is, it's more than you've ever hung out with second phase.
And it's wholly different, the way that I spend time with them and what I think about them and how much I get to pour into them and stuff like that. And so I was telling them, like, how you do, we were talking about ownership. I said, how you do when you leave here, it's like, I got to fight through when you fail. Because the first thing that I look at is, what did I do that didn't set you up to succeed? And we were talking about, like, there is such thing as too much ownership. Like, I can't take ownership of your mistakes to the point where it keeps me from functioning, and I look at myself as a failure, and it's like, you're your own man, you get to make your call. But I just told him, I said, but it is challenging because I'm pouring so much into you. I've come to think so much of so many of you that when you bomb, when you get out of here, I'm just like, dang, what did I not do?
Yeah.
Like, where did I?
Because you're with them every single day for months 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
Now, for me, I'm there with them on the front lines as soon as they get here.
Yep.
And we're doing IOP 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, between me and Ryan. And so I got a relationship with every single first phaser.
Yep.
Whereas 3 years ago, if I could name 2 first phasers, it probably wasn't the best thing. Yeah. Because that wasn't my role.
I can remember times where I would be in your office and a first phaser would come in and just interrupt, like never mind.
We had one the other day.
Yeah, but he'd interrupt and they'd say something stupid to you, always, because it was never good. And you would respond to them rather sternly, and then when they'd leave, you look at me and you go, who was that?
Who was that guy? Yeah, I need to remember him. That way, if somebody else says something later, I'll be like, yeah, I know that guy. Yeah, because that wasn't my role. And so, so spiritually, hey, we've changed a lot. With our expectations and what our aspirations are, they've changed a lot. Fresh Start and our roles at Fresh Start, now I think, this is the best version of Fresh Start that we've had as far as program wise and that kind of stuff.
Strong staff right now too.
Strong staff because they've been together for so long
Yeah.
and everything. I think that because they've been together so long, they get a little lazy and complacent in some areas just because they've been together so long.
That's fair.
But the other side of it is they're a lot more efficient. Because they know what they're doing and they're confident in what they're doing and stuff. So I think that's great. But Fresh Start has changed. Our role in Fresh Start has changed a lot. What else? You said physically. I know we don't have much more time. Physically, you way more and are stronger than you were before.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm almost as strong as I've ever been. I'm real close. And which is within the last 3 years, I got really sick. And a lot of people don't know about that, but I got really sick, and I got to where I couldn't bench but 135 pounds, which went from, I was at like 270, 275, somewhere in there, and it rolled all the way back to 235, and it did it in 2 months. And so we didn't know what was wrong with me. Went a lot of different places to get checked out. Nobody had any answers. And I just kind of put all my eggs in the basket of trusting that the Lord was going to deal with it, so much so that I signed myself up for a Spartan Ultra Marathon like 6 months ahead of where I was at my sickest. And I just believed that God was going to do something here. And so I signed myself up for something terribly difficult at my worst physical state because I believed that the Lord was going to make me to where I could do it. And I did. And so now it's been just like a slow climb back to trying to get my physical health in order. Had some more challenges and things that I went through. Had to get on some different medication stuff, try to get some of that stuff leveled out. But at the end of it all, man, I'm as good as I've ever been. And I genuinely feel that way in all areas of my life. I feel like I'm the best husband I've ever been. I feel like I'm the best father that I've ever been. I feel like I'm the best leader I've ever been, the best preacher I've ever been, the best son, the best friend. And I'm most zoned in on taking care of myself the appropriate ways. But I also think I've done a better job finding balance. Because I didn't really have any balance 3 years ago. I don't know, and it may kind of run together a bit for you just because you've kind of always had to hear me talk about it, but you didn't have to live it, or say you live your own version of it. But I was all gas to the floor 3 years ago, and I was running and gunning and moving, and so much so, probably too much, to where there were some things that were important that probably weren't getting the time that they needed to get. And so I've done some major rearranging of what my schedule is so that I can still punch that gas hard, but don't miss some of the critical things along the way. And that has definitely been something the Lord has been helping me with.
Yeah, I think your, work-life balance or whatever they call it and stuff is way superior than what it was 3 years ago.
I think so too.
I think that there was a time, like just being honest here, I think there was a time where people thought that maybe you were a little flighty and stuff, and it was because when you did something, you did it all out. And so they see that emphasis. And then when you do the next thing, you do it all out. And then now I think you're a lot more balanced with your life and consistent with your ministry and that kind of stuff. So I think that's wonderful. I think it's great. And, so the next thing real quick is as far as physical health goes, I'm probably about the same weight and size as I was then. I've went up and down since then and stuff. I'm not real sure. I'm definitely the strongest that I've been.
I'm about to say, you're definitely the strongest you've been.
Definitely the strongest I've been, but weight-wise, it's probably close to the same as 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit heavier right now.
We were working out together.
Were we 3 years ago?
It was close to around there.
Okay.
Close to around there. And so, you're not a little bit stronger. You are wildly stronger than you were.
Yeah, I think I am. And like I said, it's hard to see it in yourself and hard to see those timelines.
Yeah.
I
remember the numbers.
The reps and stuff.
Yeah, I remember the numbers.
And so I know that with my weight, I'd gotten down, but it might have been right before 3 years ago or somewhere like that. Probably more comfortable with the weight that I'm at now. But I know it's been a goal for several years to be in the best shape that I've ever been. And I feel like I failed at that goal all 3 of those years. And this year won't. It won't. We will hit that goal this year.
Amen,
and
dude.
we're well on our way to being, if not the best shape now, we will be the best shape, by the end of this year for sure. Now, the next thing, like I said, we're close on time, is family.
Mm-hmm.
You got a whole nother kid.
I do. It's true.
Right? My kids have moved off, back, moving in, so we've had a lot of moving parts on that.
Yep.
So just catch us up on your family in the last 3 years.
Yep, we are 9, 6, 4, and 2 now, and my wife is killing it more so than she ever has. She's always been a gem, but she's at her top form without question. She's the best mom, the best wife. She's actually in the best physical shape she's ever been in. She's solid. She's singing Sunday morning wearing like a sleeveless dress. It's like a gun show up there, man. She's looking good, man. Looking real good, and she's feeling good, and she's just after it right now. And family stuff's going well. They've been able to come alongside me in my ministry, which is not something they've really ever got to do because I was too pedal to the floor. Yeah. I was moving too fast for them to come with me. And so now I'm moving at a speed that's still aggressive, but not so fast I can't bring them along.
Able to be more of a family affair.
Right. And so that has been really, really cool. And so super pumped about that. Aria is brilliant. And I just, that's not a biased father. She's brilliant. Mm-hmm. And Arlen is in a stage right now where she's just really seeking deep intimacy with her mother and I, and that's been really fun because she's on my hip or on Courtney's hip all day, and so it's so much fun to be a part of and just get to see like how much she loves us. And just Isla Blake, she's just a little baby doll. Just like she's been that feels like she's been that way for 3 years. Right. She's got the biggest, brightest smile, prettiest eyes, and she's just a fun, loving kid. And Maddox is coming into his own. He's an aggressive little booger, but in a good way, And then I got 4 great kids and a great wife. I am blessed. I am the richest person in the world. Amen.
And on me, 3 years ago, Annalise was probably starting her first, big girl job, as an auditor now, and now she's a senior auditor. Mm-hmm. And the only one that got the promotion, she was thinking others were, and she was the only one. And so she, went from, basically just starting her professional career. Now her, pre-professional career was star-studded. She had really good jobs at really good times and stuff. But as far as getting out of college and being in the professional business, man, she's just killed it and, moved to Dallas and made the money and made the career and all that. And now just recently moved back to Shreveport and is allowed to do the same job for the more money and stuff and do it from home and everything. And so it's like you go out to the big city and you make the name for yourself, and then you're able to kind of scale it back, but yet you didn't have to scale back the money or the lifestyle or anything like that. And so that's really cool. And then 3 years ago, Elena's, not even got any degree. Now she's got, a master's degree on top of a regular degree. And now she's went to Dallas, and she's, making money and doing great and getting the promotions and really doing well and striving and stuff. And then Cooper was a freshman, and now he's, just graduated his senior year at high school, and he's actually heading to orientation at Louisiana Tech in a couple hours, and going for orientation. The other side of it is, Annalise was, maybe just started peck on the keyboard a little bit. Now she's a whole worship leader that can do it all by herself. Yep. Play keyboard and sing and all that. And up to a year and a half ago, nobody had ever heard her sing one thing besides me, know. And then Elena has grown in so many different areas that, she's just, her level of maturity has just really excelled, during this whole time. And then Cooper, he's learned how to play drum box, learned how to play bass guitar. He has got a stock account on his phone, to where he's got over $3,000 in a stock account, that he's able to manage and look at. He went from, a low score on the ACT to a full ride scholarship all during this time. And so we've seen a ton of growth. And then Miss Becky hasn't changed. I mean, she's
Which
just,
is, there's something to be said for that.
right. She's
Yeah.
just the same best
Yeah.
woman that God ever made.
Yeah.
And, you know, I looked at a picture the other day where I was a lot heavier than I am now and had no shape whatsoever. And Cooper was like 3 or 4 years old, you know, and so it was like 14 years ago. And I was at the same weight that I'd been at for a long time and really in no kind of physical shape. And Cooper was just a little boy. He's a toddler, you know. But Miss Becky looked the same.
Yeah.
You know, and so if you take a picture now, you know, Cooper's 100 pounds bigger than he was then in a good way. You know, I'm 70 pounds less than I was then, or, you know, at least 60. And then Miss Becky looks the same.
Yeah.
You know,
A picture
and
of
everything.
consistency.
Yeah.
That's
And
beautiful.
so she's been knocking it out of the park for a long time.
Yeah.
The rest of us just had to catch up.
That's right.
You know, so. But man, what a good episode.
What a journey it's been so far, man. Looking forward to what's next.
You know what I do want to do between now and then, and maybe you can remind me, is I'm sure there's an area of my life that's not as good as it was 3 years ago. I don't know what it is. I hadn't come up with it. I didn't try to put a lot of thought into it while you were talking and stuff, or while I was talking, because I just felt like I could do that this week. I didn't think about it until you mentioned that earlier. But it almost kind of has to be, because where your
You gotta
focus,
trade something.
yeah, where your focus changes in some different areas and stuff. I know as you're faithful, the little God gives you more, and it's more, and then the more becomes the little, so you're able to do more. I agree with that. I'm not saying anything contrary to that.
Yeah.
So I am able to handle more now than I could 3 years ago. But it just seems like there's got to be some area in my life where I've made the decision to not put forth as much effort for the greater good.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's not as good as it was before. I just had to think about that this week.
Yeah. Maybe that'll be our get to know you segment question next
Yeah,
week.
maybe so. Love y'all.